What's going on, fam? Welcome back to the channel. In this black, beautiful Mizuno box, I have debatably the greatest football boot of all time, the Mizuno Morelia 2, made in Japan. Now, Mizuno boxes all are the same with this beautiful matte black box. You've got the made in Japan Mizuno logoing here embossed in gold. And then really the only thing else on this box is the size guide, which is here. These are, of course, my usual size 9 US, a 8 UK, Euro 42, and a 27 centimeters. Now, for those of you who don't know, you can download a free size guide on my website. The reason I say that is because 27 centimeters is just a tiny bit longer than my actual foot size, and they fit perfectly straight out of the box. So my feet are about 26.7 or 26.8 centimeters, and having my feet come right up to the end, especially with an all-leather football boot like the Morelia 2, is the way to go. So again, free size guide on my website, noahcavanaugh.com. Right, so getting into the unboxing of this very, very, very special football boot. Now, these are in the brand new colorway. You do get a string bag, which is pretty subpar as far as string bags goes, but you do get one, which is really, really nice. Now, the color of this football boot, oh my days, ladies and gentlemen. These are absolutely ridiculous looking. Oh my goodness. I think behind the turquoise blue colorway that I have, these are probably my second favorite color. The white with the blue and the gold accent here on the midfoot stud, as well as the gold accents here through the heel area, are just amazing looking, like just incredible. So let's get this out of the box and we'll talk about tech specs, which is sort of a funny thing to say about a boot like this because they really aren't. There's not that many quote-unquote tech specs for the Mizuno Morelia 2 made in Japan. Now, Mizuno Morelia 2 is basically the epitome of 30 years of amazing football boots and craftsmanship. The Mizuno Morelia 2, like all the other made in Japan products, gets a 24-hour lasting period, which basically means that once you put the mold, the foot mold in here, then all of the materials, the upper, the midsole, the outsole, everything gets pressed together and into a last for 24 hours, which is quite a lot longer than most other brands, because what that does is it creates an incredible shape straight out of the box. So you get this really nice anatomical shape straight out of the box. Obviously, it helps that you have literally the most premium K-leather you can find anywhere on planet Earth on these boots. They really are something special. I mean, in my opinion, the only thing that even comes close to this, which actually, to their credit, they do come pretty close, is the Adler boots, which take a little bit of a different styling with a little bit less padding to them, a little bit less plushness, but still that same just unbelievably soft and premium K-leather. So this is obviously an incredibly lightweight boot as well for what it is, despite it having a pretty standard kind of older generation looking sole plate. They do only come in at 195 grams, which is remarkable for a boot of this sort of class and quality. You look at the equivalent in the Diadora range, the Lotto range, even the Adidas range with the Copa Mundial, which all fall into the same kind of classic leather football boot category. These are by far and away the lightest boots and the most modern feeling. And what they've been able to do is continue with the legacy of the Morelia series with this really classic look, classic sole plate and all that stuff, but they've made adjustments over time to the sole plate with, you know, you've got 3 rivets in the forefoot, you've got 3 rivets in the heel area, you've got these quality assurance things that just make this boot genuinely incredible. And I think it's one thing that a lot of people don't understand about a boot like this, is that you put it on and it is literally like a slipper. Like there's basically no break-in time. You don't need any sort of like play time in it. They just are perfect for your foot straight out of the box. The heel area does a good job as well, despite it not having a ton of padding either. You've sort of got this kind of synthetic-y material here on the back, no grip elements at all. And then you've got some padding here, like a neoprene pad or a foam padding on the underside of this really thin leather tongue. And then you've got K-leather basically throughout the entire boot, except for the area right up here near the ankle area. I guess the tongue is technically synthetic leather, but, and then right here as well, but the rest of this boot is all K leather and it is ridiculously soft, which is awesome. So the sole plate is made of P-backs as well. So you've got some nice amount of flexibility through the forefoot, but not too much. And this midfoot is actually pretty rigid for it being flat with no like kind of ridge or how would you say, like spine, as some people would call it. Now that is awesome because what it does is it gives it, yes, a nice grounded feel with these studs, but it also gives you the flexibility and the strength and snapback you need from a more modern football boot as well. Now, one note on the sole plate, I tend to find these a little bit, they're fine for AG, like they're okay, especially if it's a new AG, no problem. But the studs in comparison with the Neo series, where they're slightly thinner, a little bit more, the circumference of the stud isn't as large as these ones are. Yes, this is awesome. It's very grounded feeling, especially on firm ground. These are amazing. But on AG surfaces, sometimes, especially if it's a harder AG, these feel a little bit too, like the surface area of the studs are a little bit too wide, and so you kind of feel like you're skating a little bit, and that is literally my only complaint with this boot. I think that if this boot had studs like the Neo series, and obviously they make the incredible DNA, which is the Mizuno Morelia DNA, which is the upper of this boot with the sole plate of the Neo 4 series, which is just incredible. However, I understand why they do this, but that is literally the only negative that I see with this football boot. Now, one thing, I want to actually go over here to my boot wall because I want to bring out the Mizuno Morelia M8, which is the cross-stitch model. So as you can see between these two models, the only difference is actually the stitching pattern. I get a lot of questions about, hey, what are the differences? Do they fit any different? Do they feel any different? As you can see, literally every stitch is the exact same from this stitch backwards. They're all the same boot, all the same boot, all the same boot, except in the forefoot. This one has sort of a medial to lateral stitch just in and around, kind of like the classic Copa Mundial or the Morelia 2 does. And then this one has two of those with a bunch of cross stitches. Now, realistically, the only thing that you're gonna get between the two is, number one, it's gonna look different on pitch and on feet. It has a pretty distinct look with that cross stitch pattern, which is kind of cool. The only other thing is that you're gonna get minor differences in how much the boot stretches. So the M8 is gonna give you a slightly more locked in feel for longer. The leather isn't gonna stretch as more because there's more stitches there. And so the pockets where they would stretch, these little, like, I guess, bubbles of leather, are less so than some of these more like kind of plush areas where you can really break in and feel like you're breaking the boots in. So that's really the only difference. And that, I wanted to make sure I clarified that in today's video because I get so many questions about that. But realistically, M8 version, Morelia 2 version, you're gonna be happy either way. They are genuinely some of the best boots on the market. Definitely from a quality perspective, but also just from a fit and overall comfort perspective. So without further ado, guys, let's hop into the on-feet portion of the video. We'll talk about sizing. We'll go through all of the reasons why I think this is the best leather football boot of all time, potentially. And then we'll talk about what the plan is moving forward for these, because I know with the M8, I didn't do a play test or anything, but I probably will start ripping around in these because I think they just look incredible, and they actually match the 1-nail kits, which is awesome. So this blue is just beautiful, very rich and bold, and the gold fleck accents are just amazing. So without further ado, let's rock and roll. All right, fam, out here in the backyard with the absolutely stunning, light, beautiful Mizuno Morelia 2. It is constantly surprising to me every time I get a new pair of these, because I've had 4, I think, different pairs, 3 different pairs, 4 different pairs, 4 different pairs, and 5. I've had 5, and I own still 3. I've sold 2 pairs. Every time I get a new pair of these, it honestly is so surprising to me how lightweight and how insane, like what have they, this is magic. These are, these are the GOAT. That's why the thumbnail says GOAT. All right, here we go. So absolutely beautiful. I'm trying to stay in the sunshine so you can kind of see how beautiful and bright they are. I'll come a little bit closer to the camera in the shade so you guys can see that as well. But these look absolutely stunning. One of my favorite colorways, even though it's quite simple, I do think that it is an absolutely gorgeous colorway in my opinion. So WeFoot grip socks as well, 20% off in the discount code down below. 321. Oh my days. Yeah. There is a reason why the Morelia 2 consistently is the most comfortable boot that's ever been produced. It is so good. And I gotta tell you, the only complaint that I have about this boot, well, maybe there's more than one. Let me talk about this first. Sizing, 9 US, perfect right on the end. Plenty of space to move around. As you can see, I can wiggle my toes, no problem. The all leather upper just molds and wraps to the shape of my foot perfectly straight out of the box. No issues with kind of awkward space on the side of my ankle as well. So even despite, and this is number one frustration I have with this boot. So really quick, before I jump into the other one, I want to explain the context of the next 5 or 10 minutes of this video of the on feet portion. We are starting, instead of most boots where I'm like, low expectations, starting with the really good stuff because I'm building the boot up. Okay, maybe things that aren't as good. Okay, maybe a couple of good things, maybe things that aren't as good. We are starting at the top of the list. So the reason I'm going to talk more about negatives than about positives, or negatives that I think are negatives, that's because this boot is near perfect in my opinion. Near perfect. Like the fit, the shape, materials, everything. So I'm just going to go through a couple things that I would change, like micro things that I would change in order to make this boot even more incredible. So one of the things that I would do is add another lace hole here, and I'd add another lace hole there. And I think Mizuno really would not have any issues doing that because the tongue is long enough where that this knot with the runner's loop would only come up maybe a little bit, and that would be totally fine. And it would lock this area in even more than it already is. Because even now, it's perfect. There's no issues. I have no space right there. Fits totally flush to my foot. I'm just looking for, can we make this even a little bit more performance oriented for those who want it? And then those who don't and just want the classic fit, you can totally do it from right there, of course. The next thing that I would do is I would update the sole plate a little bit, and I would do a little bit more, something a little bit closer to what the Morelia DNA is, which is this upper with the sole plate from the Morelia Neo 4 Beta series, or Neo 4 series. That way you get a little bit more performance. I know that this sole plate has been kind of perfected over the course of years. I just think that these studs, especially if you're going to wear them on a really hard FG surface or an AG surface, they're a little bit too big in my opinion for those, because they feel a little bit like they don't dig into the ground as well as the Neo 4 series does. But I mean, as far as a boot that you can take straight out of the box and it's like the most comfortable boot ever created, these are definitely the way to go. In my opinion, this is undoubtedly in the GOAT tier list, if not the GOAT. So if we're talking like top 10 boots ever to be created on planet Earth in football, these are probably number 1 or number 2. And I mean objectively. I don't mean like what I prefer, because I prefer obviously like Hypervenom 3 is one of my favorite boots of all time. That's probably, a GOAT. That's definitely a GOAT boot for me, but I'm talking like just generally speaking, what boot fits the most people, is the most high quality, the most class, and just the boot that just does everything perfectly. So here's a full look at the boots. They are absolutely incredible looking in my opinion. It's so hard to go wrong with Morelia 2. They're so lightweight. The bottom of the boots, the sole plate, I know I said like maybe that's something I would tweak, is the stud circumference. I would make it a little bit smaller so that it's a little bit easier to dig into the ground. But because of the materials that they've used, which is a slightly softer rubber and TPU material, the underfoot feel of these, like manipulating the ball this way is crazy. They are easily one of the best because it's almost like a softer material. And so they really allow your foot to sort of it's almost like you're doing it barefoot with like a sticky sensation on the bottom. And so any sort of rollovers, any sort of manipulation where you're, doing any sort of this, it's so nice straight out of the box. And of course, as you start playing it and stuff, the sole plate feels good. It's not, of course, as responsive as the Neo 4 series is, but it still is very, very good, especially for a boot that falls into this kind of classic category where it competes with things like the Adler boots. Very snappy sole plate, very similar design as well. Also a great boot. The Yatagarasu and the Horenzo are kind of the ones that compare mainly to this one. And then you have things like the Diadora Brazil OG, which is a great boot as well. But again, way heavier, way more chunky. Even though the kind of Italian leather is definitely a different sensation, the Japanese leather is just like, it's tiers above, in my opinion, because of how soft it is and stuff. Like when you do touch on the ball with this, it is literally, it's a leather sensation. You can tell it's leather, but it is so thin and so soft. It's like a barefoot leather sensation, which is incredibly hard to execute for anybody. And that's why no one can compete with Mizuno, because they have their own treatment process that makes these the most insanely soft. Like if you look in the camera here, I can wiggle my toes, I can do everything I want to, and that's not a lack of lockdown. That is literally just how soft the boots, they've locked my foot in, but I can wiggle my toes like this because of how soft and how plush the leather is. The heel area is another thing that I think they've done an incredible job at. The heel area is just so neutral, provides so much ability to just kind of get in here, and it feels secure, it feels comfortable. They feel just, oh my God, incredible. Some of the best heel areas on the market, in my opinion. I would say this is, from a comfort standpoint, easily on par with the Asics ones, but I'm gonna pick the Asics because they're more performance oriented. So because they have the suede on the inside, it doesn't slip as much once you get into like really intensive play. Whereas I find the Morelia 2 just that tiny bit just slips a little bit in the heel area, especially when I'm playing on a surface that has no give, like an artificial ground. So when I stick my foot in and I'm pivoting, the studs pivot, but not as much as a FG pitch, right? Because the FG pitch is natural grass, so it has mud underneath or dirt or whatever, and so you get that little extra couple centimeters of pivot power, just a physics thing, right? And so you get what has to twist, right? If your knee's gonna go all the way this way and your shoe stops that way, that extra couple centimeters is gonna have to come from somewhere, and it's usually the heel area. And so on the Morelia 2, just standing in them comfort-wise, totally on par, easily with the Asics boots. It's just when you get into that like high performance, like really fast, sharp cuts that the Asics just takes the cake on that one. But overall, guys, I mean, look, if you have the cash to pay the top end price for these boots, they are the best leather boots money can buy, period. Now, if you want an alternative to the Mizuno Morelia 2 that costs way less, I would go with the Adler Yatagarasu. If you're looking for the same, not the same, but like a very similar, super thin, barefoot leather feeling football boot that's comfortable, it's beautifully crafted, actually quite snappy in the sole plate area, a little bit more classic looking. Adler Yatagarasu is, I think, the best kind of competitor, and it's a lot less expensive comparatively, right? So I should say, the asterisk there is if you're in like North American, European, and Australian markets. If you're in the Asian markets, I think they're about equal as far as price goes, as far as I know, from people that I know there. But that's the idea. But that's gonna wrap up today's review of this absolutely beautiful pair of Mizuno Morelia 2 made in Japans. These are some of my favorite boots on the market, and that's why I love the M8 cross-stitch pattern version. I love these. I love my electric blue ones. That's like my brand blue. And I just think they are an exceptional pair of football boots, and I am so pumped to continue to wear these because I think more people need to jump into the Mizuno game and jump on the Mizuno train because they are crushing pretty much everybody else on the market when it comes to leather football boots. So hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. First link down in the description box below will be the discount code for the WeFoot grip socks. You can get 20% off your whole order with code NOAH20. As always, be awesome. Take care. I'll see you guys in the next video.